So, good evening, everybody. On behalf of Dr. Manish Pandey and myself, Dr. Kinjal, I invite you all for this meeting on Radon Conclave, which Dr. Manish Pandey's vision has started in all the zones. They started with a meeting in the North Zone on, I think, 21st. Then there was a second meeting yesterday of the South Zone. Today we have a meeting on the West Zone and maybe tomorrow for the East Zone. So the agenda remains the same. We are going to talk on burning topics of CA prostate, where we'll be having one talk, a debate, and a panel discussion. So I think all of my faculty have joined. So I welcome them all and all the members who are there to listen. So I hand it over to the moderator of the session, who is Dr. Rushi Panchal. Rushi is a radiation oncologist and head of the department at Karamsad Medical College. Rushi, you can take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Kinjal bhai, for your invitation for moderating the sessions. I would like to invite our chief guest, Dr. S.K. Srivastava sir. Needs no introduction from the Mumbai for starting inaugural speech.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm really excited. I think this is a wonderful forum, and I'm sure a lot of people will benefit. I'm not sure how many people have joined right now, but all my best wishes. And this is an extremely important topic. And I'm sure Kinjal and Manish, you have done a wonderful job. So this will certainly be very useful. So all my best wishes, and I think we can carry on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now invite Dr. Rakesh Vyas sir for inaugural speech. Yes, sir, is there? RK Vyas sir?
Dr. Rushi, Dr. Vyas could not join us.
Okay, no problem, sir.
Virendra Vyas sir is there. Virendra Vyas sir is there.
Virendra Vyas sir is there. Yeah.
Virendra Vyas sir, may I now request you to for inaugural speech.
Good evening, everybody. I'm thankful to Kinjal and Manish for giving me this wonderful opportunity to learn. Actually, I am learning from you people, are youngsters. Your new ideas. CA prostate is a burning problem because earlier the life expectancy was not that much. As we know that CA prostate is of old age, and now our life expectancy increasing. But unfortunately, what happened, particularly in my practice, what I see, that patient generally goes to surgeon, and surgeon they do architectomy and send the patient back to home. After 6 months, 1 year or 2 year, patient comes to us with bone mets for palliative radiation. That is a very unfortunate situation. So we have to pursue surgeons to send the patient at proper time to radiation oncologist. Medical, so hormonal treatment, radiation treatment can be given. Radiation is very wonderful treatment option in case of prostate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I now invite Dr. Akshay Nikam, who is head of department in radiation oncology at Gwalior, to introduce speaker of our first talk of today, Dr. Maitri Gandhi. So, Dr. Akshay, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Kinjal. I invite Dr. Maitri Gandhi. Dr. Gandhi is Senior Radiation Oncologist at SCG Ahmedabad. So please, Dr. Gandhi, can deliver your lecture.
Hello, everyone. A very good evening. Is my screen visible?
Yes, madam.
Yeah, it is visible, but you can make it full screen. Yeah.
So I'll be discussing the role of ADT in the adjuvant and neoadjuvant setting with radiation in the carcinoma prostate cases. So as you all know, that prostate cancer is the second most common cancer in the men worldwide, and despite such large prevalence, the survival is there is a large survival for prostate cancer cases. Just a second. Sorry.
Full screen आ रहा है क्या?
Can you hear me?
Yes. You can start.
Yeah, we can hear you, and your screen is also visible.
Okay. So the treatment with ADT has foundational approach across all the prostate cancer cases, whether it is localized disease or locally advanced disease. The case with non-castrate rising PSA, also for non-metastatic or metastatic CRPC, and hormone-sensitive metastatic prostate carcinomas. So the role of, firstly, we'll discuss the role of neoadjuvant ADT with RT. So the study was done, RTOG 8610, where all the locally advanced prostate cancer cases were randomized into two groups, one which received radiotherapy alone and the other which received neoadjuvant hormonal therapy for 2 months, followed by radiotherapy along with the hormone therapy. And the other trial is the RTOG 9601, where the locally advanced cases were randomized into 3 arms. One was radiotherapy alone, and the other was which received neoadjuvant goserelin and flutamide for 3 months before RT, and other for 6 months before RT. So in both the cases, at 10 years, there was a significant decrease in the disease-specific mortality, where the hormone therapy was added with RT. And also there was, in the TROG trial, there was 50% reduction in the risk of prostate cancer specific mortality in the hormone therapy arm. So the survival results were also, there was significant, though the overall survival was not statistically significant, yet there was a trend towards the improved overall survival in the arm which received hormone therapy along with the radiation. So another thing, as an adjuvant to RT, the hormone as adjuvant to RT in high risk localized and locally advanced CA prostate cancers. So basically the high risk constitutes Gleason's greater than or equal to 8 or PSA greater than 20 or the T3 tumors. So there was the phase 3 trial RTOG 8531 done, in which hormone therapy was given indefinite, and it improved the overall survival of patients treated with RT compared to RT alone. So also there was a meta-analysis of the randomized trials done in the locally advanced prostate cancer cases, whether to add hormonal therapy to EBRT or not. And in that also it showed that the overall survival was in favor of hormone therapy plus radiotherapy as compared to radiotherapy alone. So all the trials, the meta-analysis, in meta-analysis of all the trials, there was a benefit in overall survival. So looking at such excellent responses of hormonal therapy, there was a question whether radiotherapy is really necessary. And you know, there were trials done for that also. That one is the MRC TR07 trial, in which 1200 patients of T3, T4, N0 were taken and randomized into only ADT versus ADT plus RT. And in that, even the overall survival favored the role of radiation compared to ADT alone. Even the deaths from the prostate cancer were significantly reduced when radiation was added along with the ADT. So even the NCCN recommends for high or very high risk group patients whenever the survival is greater than 5 years or the patient is symptomatic. EBRT plus ADT is category 1, where ADT has to be continued for at least 1.5 to 3 years. And even for patients who have undergone prostatectomy and pelvic lymph node dissection, if there are adverse features like positive margin, extracapsular extension, or seminal vesicle invasion, EBRT and ADT is the recommended treatment. So this is the EORTC trial was also done, which showed that the combined treatment led to the benefit in the overall survival as compared to radiotherapy alone. Even the 10-year disease-free survival was 47.7% as compared to 22.7% with ADT plus radiotherapy compared to radiotherapy alone. Even the 10-year prostate cancer mortality was significantly reduced when goserelin was added with radiotherapy. Even there was a 40% reduction in the risk of death with H1 goserelin, which is a huge percentage. The p-value was statistically significant. Now the role of ADT after biochemical relapse. So this SWOG trial was done, in which there was significant improvement in the overall survival, prostate cancer specific survival, and PFS in node positive patients after radical prostatectomy and pelvic lymph node dissection, in which the patients received, the one group received immediate ADT and the other was the observation, and in that also the hormone therapy. The hormone therapy arm showed significant benefit in every aspect. Another was a multi-institutional trial in which the patient after radical prostatectomy, they underwent either RT or RT plus hormonal therapy, and in that too the cancer specific survival was increased with the addition of hormonal therapy. Now this trial, in which there was a rising PSA 6 months or later following a radical prostatectomy, were randomized into either radiotherapy alone or 6 months of goserelin plus radiotherapy. And there was 46% reduction in the risk of progression or death with H1 goserelin post RP. So there was a even subgroup analysis, and which there was benefit in all the subgroups too. Now neoadjuvant hormone therapy plus radical prostatectomy. So that did not show to provide any extra advantage if you are going to undergo prostatectomy, but definitely in the adjuvant settings, depending on the histopathological report. So there are various ADTs available, the LHRH agonist, antagonist. So we have to carefully choose which drug to use and the duration of therapy, and that has specifically implication on the survival, the disease-specific mortality, and the overall survival. So the outcome was better for the patients in which the Gleason score was high, and in the locally advanced cases, the high risk cases. So goserelin has clinical data across the 3 key prostate cancer settings. One in which the localized prostate cancers, where a 40% improvement in the 10-year overall survival versus RT alone was seen. In the locally advanced prostate cancers, a 46% reduction in the risk of progression over 10 years when added to radiotherapy versus radiotherapy alone. And in also metastatic setting, it was very effective. Thank you. This is, thank you everyone for the patient listening.
Dr. Maitri Gandhi for a very lucid presentation. Now, may I now invite Chairperson Dr. Siddharth Nanda, who is currently at AIIMS Raipur, for take-home message on the topic we just discussed. Dr. Nanda, please. Dr. Siddharth Nanda, please. So now we are moving on to next session is on debate. May now invite Dr. Shantanu Sharma from Jaipur to introduce the topic and invite judges to start debate.
So Dr. Shantanu Sharma is joining in 1 minute.
Rushi, if you permit, can I just sum up the what Dr. Maitri has said?
Actually, the role of the
Yes, Kinjal, please do that.
Yeah, so I'll just sum up. What Rushi wanted to know. If you sum up what Maitri was trying to say, that a role of edit is very important as far as the radical radiotherapy is concerned, whether it is an intermediate risk group, high risk group, or a locally advanced group, and specifically for the metastatic group. So when you talk about the role of ADT along with radiotherapy, usually we prefer to start the neoadjuvant hormones. We start with the hormones, and maybe after 1 to 3 months, we start with the radical radiotherapy. And the choice of drug, as rightly mentioned by her, that it is usually chosen. You can choose any drug which you are comfortable with. A person who goes for a goserelin has to take a sub-Q depot into the abdomen, or if you go for a leuprolide, it is an intramuscular injection. So maybe patient's comfort is also important when you choose the drug. Sometimes now we prefer giving Pharmagon. We do use that. That is a bit painful injection which is given into the sub-Q area of the abdomen. So you have to see the multiple factors before you choose the drug. Some patients we start concurrently, where you want to start radiotherapy early, you give hormones along with radiotherapy. But majority of the times for localized tumors, we give hormones first and then we go for radiotherapy. Yes, Rushi, I think next we can go to the next session.
Next session is on debate. So may now invite Dr. Shantanu Sharma from Jaipur to introduce the topic and invite the judges to start debate. Dr. Shantanu Sharma, please. Dr. Shantanu Sharma.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Okay, yes.
Good evening, all.
Yes, audible.
And this is my proud privilege to now have the debate session. And debate session will be on oligometastasis. And the speakers are Dr. Ashish Kumar and Dr. Pooja. And Dr. Ashish will be speaking on the for, and Dr. Pooja will be speaking on against. And please be informed that you will be given 10 minutes each. And then after completing your debate, you will have 60 seconds for your rebuttals. And for the judgment, may I invite Dr. Vivek Bansal and Dr. Sumit Basu. So now I first invite Dr. Ashish Kumar.
Thank you.
Dr. Ashish.
I am Dr.
Yes.
Dr. Ashish. The organizing team is very thankful to Dr. Ashish, who accepted our invitation in very last minute, because one of the speaker who supposed to speak on this topic in last moment refused due to some personal reason. So we are very much thankful to Dr. Ashish to prepare this debate in a very short time. Thank you, Ashish.
Yeah, this is
please start.
Very credible for Dr. Ashish.
Yeah, I got 5 hours, and that too was sleeping that time. Anyhow, so I'll be focusing on that. The oligometastasis is actually, it came from Greek word and is named as a fever in scanty. There is no consensus definition on oligometastasis still. When it was a bone scan era or CT scan era, we used to say 1, 2. Then it turned out to be the PET scans, so many. But ultimately, it's still evolving, and it is still dependent on imaging modality. So oligometastasis definition may change. It's still changing, and that's why the debate is happening. But somewhere it is in between localized disease versus between localized disease and widespread metastasis, where very less hope is there. And why this is important, especially in the prostate, because prostate is a slow growing tumor. Hypothesis was given with these two senior doctors who said that there are still some hope and there should be some local control, because this patient has still quite surviving for some time to face the problem of cancer. It's not always cure. It is always some, many times it's a control of the disease, because whatever life they have, they should be surviving with a good quality of life. There may be a different presentation. I'll not go into that because everybody is aware of that, and I have to focus on that. Why focal ablation is needed? And there are a few points for that. First thing is that the prostate has a doubling time. This is not in the weeks, not in the days. These are in the months. So your patient is going to face the problem of metastasis. So we need to control that, and control effectively, not just giving palliation, because even with the palliative radiation, they will be surviving along. And what happens when they present to us again? And majority of the patient, they may be surviving for the 3 to 4 years with the suffering. So that is why the medicine comes and ablation comes. Second thing is that the scans are available. Earlier scans were limited. Now the scans are whole body. Maybe whole body MRI, maybe whole body PET scan. And there's so many debate is going with the fluorine based, fluoride based, sodium based and other thing. But NCCN today is saying that PSMA higher value than anybody else on any other image. The problem is that they're not reimbursing it in America. That's why they're not publishing, and they will never publish. Third thing is that there is available tools to treat it. Earlier treatment was very limited. Now the radiotherapy is there, surgery is there, radiofrequency ablations are there. There are so many other things also, but most grown technology is radiotherapy in the form of SRS and SBRT. Everybody knows it. When single METs came in the brain, we said SRS. Then 5 METs came, then said, oh, SRS maybe. Now it is 15 METs. And that too in the most critical part of the body, and we are doing SRS safely. So why not to the rest of part of the body, and why not prostate oligomets? So this is the science which is still evolving, and it is a very good in the safer hands. Those who have the tools, those who have the knowledge. There is an opportunity for cure and long-term control. I am not showing that SBRT treats all the patients and cures all the patients, but yes, it gives a control. But if you don't do this, there is 0% chance of cure. So 20% is why it is bad. So it should be. And we know from all the other sides of the body, cancers like breast cancers, lung cancer, we've seen in our practice, patients are surviving along 5 years, 3 years, they are definitely surviving. And we have our own experience with the palliative radiation for the prostate cancers. We are treating this prostate cancer, they are coming again and again for getting rest of the part of radiation. So why not to ablate that? And they will be doing well. That data first time came the large data, phase 2 trial. I'm not saying the retrospective, small, level 5 evidences. SAVR data first time came, the rest of the part of it, we combine all the cancers. They said so there is a survival benefit. Not only that, quality of life is very good. So it should be implemented in the rest of the body, and we are doing for the lung cancer, breast, why not prostate? So the prostate dedicated trials came in the form of the STORM trial and Oriole trial. And both have said very clearly that you can make the ADT treatment, which is a systemic treatment, you can delay it. You can delay it for 6 months. You can delay it for 1 year. There is no survival improvement, that's true. But it is giving an opportunity to have a more aggressive treatment for this kind of patients. And not focusing only on the SRS, there are some people, those who are doing radical prostatectomy in the metastatic setting. Data will come. And this data will be same like what we are dealing with the COVID vaccine. And we put all vaccines, no? Though we don't have that much data. If life comes for us, we take it. But if life for the cancer patient, this is more deadly than COVID, then we are still discussing and debating. I tell you, what's the STORM said, if there is a 20% free chances that you can make the patient free from the PSA recurrence. Why the debate is happening, the problem is that NCCN guideline still says the STAMPEDE trial rather than STORM trial. They are saying treat the primary and take care rest of the things by the ADT. So that is a problem. But I'll say you STAMP3 is a phase 3 trial. That's why we are quoting that. But remember, this STAMPEDE trial was not there 5 years before. But we argued that why to treat that M1 disease. So slowly over time we have changed. NCCN is too late to change. in that column, today's download, it says low volume disease should be treated. So there is a contradictory in NCCN itself. There are so many data, I don't want to present it. This is very clear-cut message. That case Stampede Stromp in oral trial has clearly said that is a phase 2 trial. It's a phase 2 trial, but it has said clearly. In 2018, this was the question posed to all the audience in the ASTRO meeting. So the whole staging changed to the stage 4. Now, how to treat this? They did a survey, 4 questions, and majority of the people are having different opinion. But you see, 5 years down the line, our opinion was choice A. Now their choice is this. So you treat with radiation to the primary node, metastasis, and give ADT. So this is a really aggressive treatment, and they are willing, but they will not write, and they will not write, they will not follow. We had the same tools what they have. We had the same experience what they have. Not only that, why we are focusing on the SBR? Because there is a immunological changes, and you can call it a auto-vaccination because you are fighting that cancer and generating antigens, and that is leading to the abscopal effect. So why not auto-vaccine? So yeah, these are the biological things, and still trials are going in the mice and other things. Humans has also been enrolled in that. Macrop's lecture is very clearly in 2020, he said that yes, this will be the future, that you ablate all the metastatic sites and you can still consider for the radical prostatectomy. And why they are deviating? What else choice we have? We have a choice of only ADT. That's it. And what ADT does, it is already enumerated in the so many side effect lists. What does what bad side effects that ablative radiotherapy or other thing does? Nothing, especially if it is in a good hands. Learning hands will be definitely damaging and burning everything. But everybody has done. Those who are doing and those who know how to do. So I'll be concluding that part. There are merits are so many with the ablative therapies. Significant local control, significant ADT-free survival, significant progression-free survival, immunological effects because it can act as an auto-vaccine, less side effects. Only problem is that we have a phase 2 study and a small sample size. So that lies with the COVID vaccine also. No? We took it, that vaccine. No? So why not to offer these cancer patients? It's weird. That's the answer. There are so many benefits. It gives you local control, delays in the progression, because you have so many numerate mets, it will lead to the brain mets one day. And that brain mets will definitely kill us. It delays the systemic therapy, especially chemotherapy is inhibitive because it lowers the immune reaction. It has no side effects of chemo. It has a minimal side effects. And I'll conclude that topic. I don't think so there is a debate in that. So I don't know what house understands. My classical teaching is that prostate is very slow cancer. Palliative radiation, and these patients are again coming in. So it is better to treat in the long-term control. Don't say it's a curative. This is misnomer. Even T1 cancers are not recurring. T1 prostate fails. Is it curative? No, it's failing. T2 is failing. T3 is failing. Even after radical prostatectomy, best of RP and best of radiation, it's failing. So it is a control of disease. Yes, that is control. We are talking about this.
1 minute more to go.
No, thank you. I'm done. I think Pooja can take the rest of the part of it.
Yeah. Now, please, Dr. Pooja.
Yeah.
And she'll be speaking against.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Shantanu Bhaiya, for the kind introduction. And Ashish Bhaiya, you have to stop the screen sharing so I can proceed.
Yeah. Right. Did it.
So is my slide visible and am I audible? Bhaiya, is my slide visible and audible?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, yes, it is. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see.
So good evening, one and all. Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Manish Pandey, Dr. Manish Bhaiya, Dr. Kinjal Bhai. I don't know whether they invited me with a good gesture because they've asked me to talk about a topic and I have to talk against my own radiation. And I have to talk against Ashish Bhaiya. So I don't know whether it's with a good gesture or with a revenge I have to speak today. But I think in the next 10 minutes, I'll try to do justice to the topic I've been given. So I have to speak against the motion. I think Ashish Bhaiya also agreed that this is a concept which was introduced in 1995 by Hellman and colleagues, the oligometastatic disease. But it is a disease which is proposed to be intermediate between a localized and a fulminant metastatic disease. Ashish Bhai also agreed that there is no optimum definition of oligometastasis. If you see the review of literature, there are different papers which define oligometastasis differently. Some papers would say it's less than 5, some would say there is less than 4, some would say less than 3. So basically, we are trying to start with some confusion in our mind. The second confusion comes when we are not sure what is called a high volume and a low volume. Because again, if you see all these standard trials, the Stampede trial, Chartered trial, or what Dr. Maitri spoke about the GetUG AFU trial, they all have different definitions. But more or less, the high volume was described as greater than 4 bone metastasis with 1 or more outside the vertebral bodies and pelvis, and or visceral metastasis, and others was termed as low volume. Also, this was also been shown by Dr. Ashish Bhai, where he tried to say that there are different clonal group of patients. One who is a de novo oligometastasis, one who is oligometastatic after having received any primary form of treatment, and one who is a polymetastatic disease. So the thinking is that one size would not fit all for all these different group of patients who have a different behavior, a different biology. To add more confusion, there is a disproportion or no consensus even in the imaging, which Dr. Ashish also agreed. He said that there are different imagings being used, where we start with conventional imaging, where the sensitivity is about 70 to 80%, bone scan 60 to 80%. There is today we talk about the multiparametric prostate or the whole body MRI. And if you see, there was a study which said that 28% of the patients with metastatic hormone sensitive disease and 52% of the patients with metastatic castration resistant prostate cancer was being termed as oligometastatic. There are other imaging types like choline PET scan, which has a overall sensitivity and specificity of 89%. There is the fluorococolone PET scan, which has a sensitivity of 66%. And there's a PSA PET scan, which is used more commonly with a sensitivity and specificity of 86%. But again, you should also have this facility at your center. So I think we are starting with a subset which is not clearly defined, with a subset which is not properly diagnosed because the imaging is also a little bit dubious. And then we start with a confused treatment. But having said that, we should remember that ADT is the backbone since 1940s. And there are very different papers which talk about enhanced results with ADT when we add abiraterone or docetaxel. And dear friends, these papers, they have very crisp and clear conclusions. If you talk about this paper, which was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, the Latitude trial, which is basically a phase 3 trial, which talks about the patients, about 1,200 patients being randomized into ADT versus ADT plus abiraterone. The overall survival and the radiographic progression-free survival was the primary endpoints being studied. And what they concluded was very crisp and clear. Abiraterone, acetate, and prednisone, when added to ADT, it results in increased overall survival and radiographic progression-free survival. So there was no confusion. If you see another paper which was published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, which talks about the Chartered trial, the very famous trial. Again, here there is no confusion. There are 800 patients. They have been randomized in 2 arms, ADT alone versus ADT plus docetaxel, 75 milligram per meter square, 3 weekly for about 6 cycles. And again, the conclusion is very clear, dear friends, that the updated data is clear that there is an absolute benefit of adding docetaxel to the ADT. Now, dear friends, let us see what Dr. Ashish was trying to say. What is the advantage with the ablative studies? If you see these papers here, the results, they come with a pinch of salt. Let's talk about the very famous HORET trial. It was a trial with a multi-centric randomized trial with 400 patients being divided into ADT versus ADT plus EBRT, clearly saying that there is no significant difference in overall survival, 45 months in the RT versus 43 months in the control arm. And dear friends, what to see more important is the dose which was used was 70 grain, 35 fractions. And during the study period, they had an optional schedule of 57.76 in 19 fractions. So dear friends, this is not at all an ablative dose we are talking about. And what was the conclusion? Conclusion was that comparing ADT with EBRT to prostate in patients with primary metastatic prostate cancer showed no significant difference in overall survival. Next talks about the very important Stampede trial, a phase 3 trial with about 107 hospitals being recruited from Switzerland and UK, with about 2,000 plus patients from 2013 to 16, patients being randomized in 2 arms, either receiving the standard of care, that is the ADT, or the standard of care ADT plus radiotherapy. What was the conclusion? Radiotherapy improved the failure-free survival, but did not improve the overall survival. And dear friends, again the confusion, the dose is 55 grain, 20 fractions. Now, STORM trial. Dr. Ashish was trying to highlight this trial, which is about the surveillance or metastasis-directed therapy for the oligometastatic prostate cancer recurrence. The 5-year data from this phase 2 trial. Dear friends, please understand it's a phase 2 trial. Of course, he showed this graph which showed that median AD survival improved from 13 months to 21 months. Another very important trial which he highlighted, Oriole trial. Again, dear friends, it's a phase 2. Why I'm trying to say it's a phase 2? Because the FDA put a statement in 2017 saying that 22 studies which were being identified from 1999, promising to be as a phase 2 clinical trials, were not confirmed in the phase 3 clinical setting. So we should give a pause over here before we conclude and we decide to change our everyday practice. Suppose if I say, let's be friends, because ultimately we and Ashish Bhai are in the same fraternity. And if I try to say his language that, come on, let's delay ADT. What's the problem? A very important trial, TOAD trial, which said that if you delay ADT, you're actually making the treatment more detrimental. And the overall survival, 5-year overall survival is still favoring for the early ADT, which is about 91.2% versus 86% if you're delaying it. Or if I try to join hands with him and say that, yes, SABR is good. But then, dear friends, please see this editorial article published in our very reputed fraternity journal, IGRBP, which talks about curing metastatic disease with ablative radiotherapy, sparing the truth from the wish, where it says oligometastatic disease is a radiographic diagnosis, first of all. So there are limitations of imaging. Seeing the disease earlier may give a false impression that there are only few metastases, where the reality would be different. We may not forget the risk. The SABR Comet trial, my dear friend, included in a slide, it showed that there was a 4.5% incidence of grade 5 toxicity, despite all these plans were being reviewed by all leading peer radiation oncologists. And one more question, would they live better? Still, because of the time constraints I was given, I have only highlighted the ablative techniques, that is the radiation. I have not talked about surgery, but as my friends say, I would agree, because ultimately it is also my bread and butter that yes, radiation would be more better because it affects the immune modulation. But there would be some trials regarding surgery also. And if we see, time would answer, because there are some studies going with prostate surgery, the RAM trial and the Trombol trial, which will show some light in the coming years to come. Also, there's another important trial going on, the PEACE-1 trial and the STOPCAP M1 trial, which states the value of prostate radiotherapy in men receiving abiraterone being tested. So I think with my talk, I would be convincing to all that oligometastatic prostate cancer is a heterogeneous disease. It is imperfectly understood. The clinical implications are unclear. The biology is not well understood. Still, the knowledge about the genomic and the molecular events involved in the disease progression is lacking. And still, we hold true to a fact that there's a multidisciplinary panel which should be there so that we can tailor treatment for every patient, and a one treatment would not fit for all. And that's why, again, if you see my statement, which was very important, our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things in life that really don't matter. And before I end, a warm greeting from my Gujarat Radiating group. We are very enthusiastically supporting in this vaccination, and I'm assuming that you all will be also supporting as well. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. And now both the contestants have done their work, and now there's 1 minute time each for rebuttal. So first, I may request Dr. Ashish if he has any rebuttals.
I'll say 1-2 points. I said that the trials should be compared with the ablative trials, not with the non-ablative trials. Because those who are non-ablative trials, we should not compare the overall survival. Second thing is that the STORM trial was designed to compare the ablative therapy with ADT, not to do in a practice that ADT is having no role. If you combine ADT with ablation, this will give a much higher result. So it was designed to do that. There should be some comparison. Second thing is that anybody who has a SBRT facility will now have a PSMA or MRI facility. Is little dicey situation, even though it is happening in different cities, should be done. And second thing is that any patient is there and having one METS at the pubic symphysis or one METS in the ischia, should not be treated that, or we should leave on the ADT. So I leave another house that what are the votes towards the ablative therapy and what are the votes towards, this is what the US Astro also does it. So the vote came 60% plus for ablation rather than 40% ablation, while still thinking for the ADT because of non-availability, not having no information about, we'll keep cursing the biology forever. So that's my point.
Can I speak?
So, yeah, Dr. Pooja.
So, Ashish, I also agree with that thing. I'm just trying to say, because this topic has been given to us, the oligometastatic, there the definition is a little bit dubious. We are trying to say that one size should not fit for all. Of course, if we have saber with us, but that does not mean if I have a hammer in my hand, everything should look a nail to me. No,
Yeah,
I'm just trying to say
we
should have.
No.
Yes, it might.
You said it's not a curative for.
Yeah. I just trying to say that we should definitely have some specific clonal of patients to be selected to offer this type of ablative techniques to a defined specified group of patients. That is my final take.
And I think that's why the government has chosen us to take vaccination, not to everybody. So this is the selection. Okay? And you took the vaccine and you presented in your presentation, and the cancers are still a bigger killer than COVID.
Because we don't have anything else option in this dark area to just do vaccine.
Option.
But we have a lot of options in cancer treatment. It is going since ages. It is not just
SBRT came 15 years before.
Yeah, so that's why we are trying to say we should define a group of patients. That's why I'm not defining. In fact, I will be next day if any patient comes to me for a saber, even I would agree for a saber. I would not put down my bread and butter.
Yeah, so that's fine. Agree.
So both are done.
Yeah, I think we are happily done.
Yeah. So since now we are having enough time, rather we are ahead of time. So may I request the judges, Dr. Vivek Bansal, to have some words of wisdom, followed by Dr. Sumit Basu for his words, and then finally the result.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think both the contestants had done a good job. My take on this point at the moment is I agree with Ashish as far as it's slow growing. You have better images modalities coming, and you have much better treatment possibilities now. The data which we have in the past probably may or may not hold good, because research is a continuing process, and we need to evolve the protocols. We need to evolve, and we need to evolve with time. Recurrent-free survival of 2 years with SABR plus ADT, I think that's pretty encouraging data. And I think with time, we will evolve better. If at all we decide, as Pooja clearly said, or Ashish also clearly said, identify the patients who are going to do better. We need to understand that ADT cannot be obviated. We are very clear about it that with RT, ADT has to be given moment you have intermediate or high grade patients. So there is no doubt about that ADT has to be given. Time is evolving that we have to be changing our thought processes, have MDT and have proper evidence-based guidelines to accept what is better given in the settings which we are going to work, given the limitations of imaging also. I think that's where we should not be treating as SABR and failing somewhere else. We need to also address the primary at that time with the radiation, which I saw the missing link. Everybody is talking about treating metastatic sites. Probably I feel, I'm very clear that we should be also treating the primary at that point of time. And both have done a great job, but I think we need to accept the upcoming results. We need to evolve with time, and there is nothing short that whenever you're hitting the primary and the oligometastatic side, we'll be definitely having a much better results. Right? Thank you. That's all. Over to Sumit Basu.
Yeah. Dr. Sumit, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I first of all congratulate both the debaters for the wonderful presentation which they gave. Very short, very crisp, and very well done. But I totally agree with my friend Dr. Vivek Bansal that actually we are all more or less on the same page. Although we are debating here, but we are on the same page. We're all talking about, yes, most of us are equipped with now today with the very good tools of radiation. This is all we are talking of ablative treatment with radiation, is because today the technology has evolved and we are gaining confidence day by day as we are doing more and more of this SABR kind of treatments. So yes, this is coming. But then let's talk science. If you talk science, yes, it has shown that yes, there is a benefit, and although maybe we don't have any data to which there is very strong evidence is not there. But as we say, as we know that, I mean, it's not going to come also that way. It's not going to be that easy to get very, very strong. But yes, these have already been now getting incorporated. And I totally agree in the guidelines. And I do agree with Dr. Bansal that when we treat oligomets, if at all we are treating as an ablative dose to give a better control, we also must consider the primary. And there is no doubt, absolutely, that the ADT is not going to go anywhere. We are not talking about only ablating the metastasis with radiation. The ADT also has to be there because the systemic control is also important. Even though they look oligo on the imaging, whatever modalities we are available, but there can be, of course, subsequently more meds will definitely can come up, and we have to deal with it. So there is a point, but I do agree that both the debaters did present. Of course, the data is not very strong to say that each and every case we have to do it, as we have discussed already enough that yes, it has to be individualized. We have to consider so many other factors, but definitely there is an evidence, and there is. It's not that we will not use SABR. We must do it if we can do it well and planned. And absolutely, I think both of them have been very good, both the speakers.
I had a patient of CA prostate treated in the 3 years before and had a brain metastasis. Will ADT work?
No, you're right. I mean, here there's definitely a role, of course. Yeah.
Ashish, that is a totally different setting. So we were probably talking of proximal oligometastasis, not the distant metastasis. So that's a different ball game totally. Of prostate going to brain, we have to be very careful in choosing our treatment and everything.
Can I make a comment, Kinjal here? Yeah. So I agree with what Ashish was saying. Both the presentations were perfect. They both put their points very clearly. Pooja, I had to talk with Pooja because she was saying that, you gave me a topic where I have to talk against the radiotherapy. So it was very tough for her, but she did a justice to what she was saying. And she also agrees, she also agrees that definitely there is a role of SBRT. So if a patient with a oligometastasis comes to her, me, or with Ashish or Bansal sir, or anybody of us, we would definitely be thinking about SBRT. But yeah, at the same time, we have to be very careful when we choose the patients. So a patient comes with a brain metastasis, there will definitely be a role of radiotherapy more than the hormones in such a scenario. Or if it's a solitary bone metastasis, we'll be definitely more keen to treat this patient. Sometimes, the surgeons also feel that, if it's an oligometastatic condition and it's a smaller prostate, why don't I operate the prostate? So that is also something, which the surgeons are working on. So this is an area, it's a gray zone, it's a MDT decision. So we all have to sit together in such a scenario and, choose the best for that particular patient.
One last comment from my side. Please next time give me the same debate, but to speak for the motion.
But you will do justice to that also, Pooja. I'm sure.
Of course,
you will
I'm
do it better.
doing a 9 minutes job.
No, you dealt with a difficult thing actually. It was a more difficult part for you.
You did a good job, Pooja. You really did a good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, may I request the judges to give their formal result, or you would say who is the winner of the debate?
I don't think that would be a right choice to say at this point of time.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I would say, I think we should be really careful, as everybody said. And in oligometastatic setting, radiation to the oligometastatic setting does hold a place. Yes, time will prove with over the years, I think we'll be proving that this is an effective modality. Let us accept the fact, Pooja, whatever I have said also. So carefully choosing and right thing. So both are good to me. Both are good. And it is difficult to say who did better, but I will say that with this thing, both of them did a good job. Let's not select first and second in this.
Yeah, that should be the spirit. Yeah.
I totally agree with Dr. Bansal. Both are winners, actually. Both are very good.
Yeah, that should be the spirit.
Both put their points very convincingly.
Bansal sir, do offer us a good cup of coffee when we come to you.
Oh, definitely.
Select the date and time. I'm ready.
Yeah, just unzoom yourself and you can come anytime. Absolutely, most welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So again, thanks a lot to the speakers as well as to the judges.
Thank you both speakers and both judges for excellent discussion. The next topic session is on panel discussion. I now invite Dr. Manish Indo to moderate the panel. Dr. Manish Indo, sir, please.
Dr. Rishi, give me 2 minutes. 1 minute only. The
Bolo
actual winner,
Pandey.
actual winner is radiation oncology, and both of done a very good job. Pooja, don't accept your defeat. It is the technology which is improving, so we have to wait and watch and see the results and adopt the technology. Debate is only to discuss our views. It is not a political debate. It is a scientific debate where you share your views and experience, so to get the benefit. So both have been a congratulations to both. And our organizing team is very much thankful to Dr. Maitri Gandhi and Dr. Manish Siddha. Actually, I don't know what was today, but we have to make lot of changes in the speaker in the last minute. And I am thankful to both have accepted our invitation in the last minute and done a wonderful job as Ashish has done. Thank you, Dr. Manish and Dr. Maitri. Please continue.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes, Manish.
Good evening, Kinjal. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you.
Okay. So again, I was a kind of a scapegoat, and this panel discussion has been handed over to me by the organizing committee. And Kinjal is a dear friend of mine, and I'll expect him to bear the brunt whenever I'm into the same kind of situation. So my panelists today are Dr. Samir Batham. He's at SAG Ahmedabad, closely working with Kinjal. Dr. Sonal, Dr. Rahul Mishra, Dr. Triranjan Basu, Dr. Nilesh Mahale, and Dr. Chirag Amin. Everybody is there?
I'm here.
And Dr. Suruchi.
I think you have to share your screen. I'm not able to see your screen.
Sir, you have to open your presentation.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes.
Sir, can you please click on the hide button?
You got it? You got it?
Yes, I got it, sir. Sir, can you please click on that hide text
Hide.
coming below the panel?
On the right
Yeah,
side.
that
Yes.
hide. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, now it is perfect.
Okay. So all the panelists are present over here. Dr. Samir,
Yes. Yes, I'm here.
Dr. Sonal. Dr. Sonal is here.
No, I think
Dr.
she is
Rahul
not
Mishra.
there.
I'm here, sir.
Dr. Rahul Mishra.
I'm here, sir.
Rahul is here.
Okay. Dr. Triranjan Basu.
Yes, yes, I'm here.
Good. Dr. Nilesh.
Present.
Dr. Chirag.
Yes, Manish, I'm here.
Okay. So thanks all the panelists to join this session. Before starting my panel discussion, I would like just to have a preliminary discussion about the panel discussion. The topic of today is when and how to treat the pelvic nodes in prostate cancer. My first informal kind of question to the panelists is: out of 10 patients that they see in their OPD, especially when the localized and locally advanced prostate cancer patient that has come to them, out of 10 patients, how many patients do you think are the kind of proper patients who should be treated by radiotherapy without any, butchery being done to them, or some alternative non-evidence based treatment has been done to them?
I would say almost 8 patients.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Rahul?
Well, we get around 4 to 5, probably 50% of those
patients. Basu?
For me also, I think about 75, so 7 to 8 patients.
Nilesh?
I think 60 to 70% patients are locally advanced.
No, you see 60 to 70% are locally advanced, but then, out of 10 patients, how many patients do you think that you can treat them properly by, using all your investigations, all your radiation oncology knowledge, treating properly evidence-based?
80%.
80%. Dr. Chirag?
40% patients are coming, like we can treat, we can investigate, diagnose, and treat according to the guidelines.
Okay. So this is the situation when we think about prostate cancer. Now my next question is, how many of you treat pelvic nodes while treating prostate cancer? Dr. Suruchi?
I treat in all my patients, all high risk and intermediate risk patients. I give whole pelvis as a mandate.
Okay. Samir?
Yes, I agree with Suruchi ma'am. I also treat all intermediate and high risk patients. I treat pelvic nodes.
Dr. Rahul?
I agree. Both intermediate and high risk, I treat the pelvic nodes along with the prostate.
Okay. Dr. Triranjan?
So for all high risk, yes. Intermediate, I would say if they're favorable intermediate risk, then we can skip. Like I would skip depending on other factors. If patient is on with elderly side, say 75 plus, say nearing 80 also we have treated. So favorable intermediate, if you're doing for SBRT, then obviously I will skip doing the nodal. But all other
Nilesh?
intermediate, all high risk pelvic nodal.
Nilesh?
Yeah, if GC permits, then I would treat all high risk patients. Intermediate risk, again, I would look at the GC.
Okay. So you individualize the patient and then you try to give pelvic this thing.
I think it is important not to have toxicity.
Okay. And Chirag?
Yes, I also treat high risk and above.
Okay. So most of the panelists, because of the panel discussion, they agree that they are treating pelvic nodes, especially when they are treating with high and super high risk prostate cancer patients. So that's quite encouraging. So from here we will start our discussion. There were a few randomized trials, RTOG 9413 and GTOG 01 trial. They both were negative trials, but there were some indication of benefit of whole pelvic radiotherapy in high risk groups. Benefit mostly is limited to the biochemical progression-free survival, but there was no improvement in clinically meaningful outcomes. Yesterday only the full text was available of TMH study, which has shown kind of improved biochemical and disease-free survival in this measure. When you talk about the previous two trials, that were being used for pelvic radiation, for pelvic radiotherapy, the benefit was not much, and there were so many reasons for it. We'll discuss in our panel discussion. And because this is a kind of a virtual platform, so it is kind of very difficult to address one by one. So whenever somebody wants to make a comment or somebody wants to provide their input, they can just hold me on and they can say. So that everybody gets properly benefited. So the issue with the current evidence is that we obviously lack optimal selection. The patient selection is always compromised, especially when you are in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because of lack of investigation modality not available in the city, and for the other reasons. The older radiotherapy techniques provided a lot of toxicities, and because of those things, it was actually very difficult to treat the whole pelvis. And so seeing those elderly gentlemen suffering from bladder and rectal toxicity will compromise the intent of our treatment. The poor availability of imaging modalities were also responsible for inadequate coverage of nodal target volumes. The dose schedule, still there is a lot of inconsistency. If you ask every panelist, everybody is using different kind of dose schedule. There is no kind of consensus. People are trying to justify their dose schedule according to their convenience and according to the facilities and according to the machine load. Again, one of the most important thing which we don't see in our practice is that for how long duration the ADT should be used, and how the ADT should be used. What is the drug of choice of ADT? There are a lot of things which needs to be individualized. There is nothing like a single thing which fits for all the patients, and all these factors affects a lot when you try to treat the prostate cancer patients. So the question for the panelist is, which patients would be considered for pelvic nodal radiation in addition to the prostate plus seminal vesicle irradiation? You can take one by one. Dr. Samir can comment first.
So as I said, all the high risk and the very high risk patients, I would consider for pelvic nodal artery along with.
So what is high risk for you?
So any T3 or Gleason's 8, PSA more than 20. So these patients I'll be, or maybe high risk is a T2, B or C.
Okay. Suppose, for example, if you have PSA more than 30 and Gleason is 6, how would you label this patient?
Yeah, that would be a high risk patient, and I would be treating lymph nodes.
So, okay. So, but there is no standard kind of assessment criteria for you, or you take only one criteria to make patient into high risk or super high risk patient?
Even there are very clear-cut definition as per NCCN.
Yes.
Certification as per NCCN.
So, what are the factors which helps you to decide patient into high risk and very high risk category?
Instance, category PSA.
Okay.
And accordingly, we stratify them into various risk categories.
Okay. So anything above, basically anything above T3 and Gleason score 7 with more than 15 PSA, you can you take those kind of patients into high risk group. Dr. Nilesh, do you assess patients by the same means, or do you have any other different criteria?
And definitely we'll go for T3, T4 and plus nodes, and then by PSA, if it is more than 20 and Gleason score like 8, 9 and 10, I would treat them like high risk and would.
So how do you investigate these patients, whether it is a T3A or T3B, based on what investigation
MR is the modality. MRI would be modality of choice. Because
so whenever prostate cancer patient comes to you, what are the investigations that you recommend to them?
Generally, I will go by the PSA levels. If the PSA levels are not too high, then MR pelvis is good enough. If the PSA levels are high, like more than 50, then I would ask for PSMA PET or FDG PET.
Okay. Any difference of opinion while evaluating prostate cancer patients, analyst?
No, I agree with what Nilesh said.
We do suggest a bone scan in our patients for all those who are having a PSA more than 10. So we do suggest a bone scan apart from MRI or whatever radiological investigations.
Okay. So MRI pelvis, bone scan, SOS depending on the PSA value. Any role of CT scan, thorax or abdomen imaging?
I would say that if the PSA is 20, also 20 and plus, because then in category wise, we would rather prescribe doing a PSA PET, because that one-stop solution for screening everything. And we have seen actually that patients pick up nodes. They may be subcentimetric, but avid gallium uptake. And then with the introduction of PSMA, they then go for a node positive disease. So it changes. And that happens even with PSA around 20 also. Very avid.
In how many percentage of patient do you see changing staging while using PSMA scan? Just an idea, just to give us an idea.
Maybe that would be 10-15%, not more than that. But then, Dr. Manish, I feel patients are very happy also doing a PSMA, because it doesn't, they don't have to do multiple. Of course, for local MRIs, we have to do MRI. We can't stratify between intermediate and high without MRI, but
without MRI,
a PSMA solves everything. The organ evaluation as well as distant, and also any nodal as well.
But for local evaluation, you certainly requires MRI. That is
100%.
That is for sure. Because what happens, Ranjan, in a lot of cities, PSMA scan is not available. It might be available at Ahmedabad, it might be available at Mumbai, but there are a lot of cities, for example, at Indore, we don't have PSMA scan. So that always becomes a kind of, certification factor.
Because once you have,
MRI, we cannot replace the, we cannot, MRI cannot be replaced as far as the local tumor extension is concerned.
Exactly.
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 That I agree. Local staging has to be MR based, multi-parametric MR. But since we have the availability and it's in-house, so it's a trend. I know it's city to city also varies. Working in a metropolitan here, prostate patients are very pro doing a PSMA. We get many patients that the urologist has done a PSMA and sent. They have not done an MRI as well, being neurosurgeons also.
So problem over here is orchidectomy, and then the patients then they send the patient after 1 year or so for treatment. Anyway, that is not a topic of discussion. It's a scientific thing. So okay, as far as evaluation is concerned, we pelvis that there is no alternative to it, and for metastatic workup, you go for either bone scan or if PSMA scan is available, then one should always go for that thing. Okay. So any
imaging itself, MRI and PSMA, by which we can evaluate the nodal status.
Okay. Dr. Nilesh, any comment? Dr. Nilesh?
NCCN criteria, the NCCN criteria covers it all, like TNM stage and PSA levels and Gleason score, these 5 factors.
Okay. So,
tumor, node,
do you routinely use Roche formula for evaluating nodal involvement, or you just take all the TNM staging or Gleason score and PSA value into account for tentative kind of nodal involvement?
So no, it is not, if it is not frank T3, T4 tumors, and then PSA is bottom, I would calculate it with using the Roche formula.
Okay. Any comment about evaluation of risk of nodal involvement? I think most of the panelists will agree for that thing. So what is the cutoff value?
20.
What is the cutoff value?
It's 15 to 35 something.
Generally, in Roche formula, if it is less than 15%, then it is less chances of nodal involvement. If it is 15 to 35, then it is intermediate, and more than it is high.
Okay. And obviously, we have discussed this thing. PSMA PET we do according to facilities, and MRI, as we have discussed, it has to be used for all the kind of patients. So this is the kind of a cartoon to make us understand about the risk of nodal involvement, the stations of nodal stations. When you contour pelvic nodes, this is a kind of a practice-based question. How do you take the superior border when you do contouring for the prostate cancer patients, especially when you are treating the nodal stations? Dr. Samir?
We usually treat the iliac nodes, the obturator nodes, and the presacral nodes. Common iliac or the para-aortic, it depends if this is a bulky disease or this is a very subjective thing, especially para-aortic. Unless they are gross or the positive node, then and only then we cover that area. Otherwise, it is the iliac, the presacral, and the obturator nodes which we cover.
But if you see, pelvic nodes are regional nodes.
Yeah.
Okay. And aortic nodes are non-regional nodes. So if it is a non-regional nodes, then it is kind of a M1 disease.
M1 disease. Agree.
So how do you take this information into account?
So basically, a common iliac node or a para.
Any change in approach when you are treating, for example, aortic nodes, something you do with your neoadjuvant treatment, you add some
Yes,
drug.
definitely consider that patient for neoadjuvant hormone, and then I will see the response.
And if it is a complete response at the nodal disease, for example, then also you take into account
Yeah, I would
into
still
a contour.
consider. I would give maybe I would like to give 45 to 50 grays still that involved part.
Okay. So, Dr.
I would like to
Triranjan, what is kind of a superior border in your cases when you draw your volumes?
So generally it is so we used to keep L5S1, but with the pivotal update, it is difficult L5S1 to see. So it's mostly the lower border of L5. Though we see, since the patient receive IV contrast, the division of the common right and left is also a good surrogate. But if it is going beyond the lower border of L5, means more cranial, then we avoid. We try to lower border of L5.
So mostly your upper limit is at the lower border side. Okay. So anybody uses MR fusion when you contour prostate and you try to plan prostate cancer?
Primary.
Does anybody uses MR fusion?
Yeah, if MRI is available, we can use it.
Only to look, I guess, delineate the apex of prostate. I don't think so. It has any additional benefit other than that.
See, that is true. But do you follow proper fusion things and sit on your system and do that thing, or you take information on planning CT scan into account and start contouring the prostate patient?
If be available and be used for the primary contour, definitely, because there's a clear estro-acroc guideline and all the CT-based volumes are more. Both the lateral border, the apex, everything increases more in CT in MR. But yes, it is very true. These MRs are not in the planning position. It is very difficult. Yes. So we account for, eventually we end up modifying the volume as well. But it helps in the apex, the lateral border, and the junction between rectum and the posterior border. It definitely helps.
But the problem with MR fusion is that it is so difficult to fuse accurately in the planning position. Except for the brain, I don't find, it's in my personal experience that MR fusion helps you a lot.
Good to say theoretical, but that's a very practical.
Practical, there is a problem. So, Nilesh and Chirag, what is your upper border limit when you draw kind of contours in prostate cancer?
For me, upper border for lymph node is L4-5.
L4-5.
Yeah, so as to include common iliac properly.
Dr. Suruchi?
I go by the aortic bifurcation mostly.
I also go by the aortic bifurcation, and as the last question you asked, that MRI is useful. Basically, MRI is useful in delineating the prostatic region to separate it from the rectum. It is better to use MRI if we are having it, so that we can delineate rectum and prostate properly.
That is, I totally agree with him that there is, when you have to define your soft tissue things, there is nothing better than MRI. But the practical problem is that you are doing a lot of good things on MRI, but then when you come over the CT scan, you find that you are into different zone.
Yeah, the proper.
So it defeats the purpose.
Yes.
So it defeats the purpose. That is a practical thing. And then bladder filling, rectum empty, and all those kind of things. There are so many things which are associated with prostate. Okay, so this was a question that I was asking to everybody. Most of the panelists, if I'm right, they use L5S1 as the topmost border when they are planning with this thing. But
Manish, can I interrupt? Manish, can I
yes?
interrupt for a second? I think
Yes.
Dr. Rahul Mishra is also there in the panel, so you can ask him also. Rahul Mishra.
Okay, Rahul. Yeah. Sorry, Rahul. I thought you were not available. Okay, no. Rahul, any comment on upper limit of nodal contours?
Yes, sir, I agree. We treat our upper limit at L5S1, but if the nodes are positive, let's say on a PSMA PET or CT or something, I mean the iliac nodes, then definitely I go up to L4 iliac. That is the common iliac bifurcation. And one short point about the image. sometimes when the urologist send us the patient, TURP and send us. And just after a TURP, most of the radiologists will not be able to do an MRI. At that particular point, especially, it becomes a little tough to find out the imaging, because many a times the urologist would have done a TURP for considering it a benign condition, and then after that, if we ask a radiologist what is the exact staging, it becomes a little difficult for them.
It becomes difficult. Okay. So how much you wait? How much one should wait while going for MRI after TURP? Any recommendation or any understanding about that thing?
4 to 6 weeks. Our radiologist tells us that at least 4 to 6 weeks post a TURP.
Which nobody waits.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is where I find sometimes a PSMA PET helps me. At least, yeah, I understand for extra prostatic extension it will not, but at least it gives me a wholesome imaging together along with the notes.
टॉपिक कंप्लीट ही हो जान दो ना.
Okay. So, as Dr. Rahul has rightly pointed out, there are a few practical things that are associated with the prostate cancer patients. Of late, there is an understanding which has been developing in the community is defining the upper border based on the vascular anatomy. You know, that is the primary force to guide us where the common iliacs are bifurcating or where the aortic bifurcation is there. But it is kind of still evolving. The paper that has been published by TMS, they have recommended for L4-5 should at least that should be the superior border of this thing. The reason is simple, because they found that when you are treating at the superior border of L5-S1, there was 42% as compared to 93% when you are reaching to border to L4-5. So inadequate coverage in the previous trials where the superior border was L5-S1, that might be also be a reason for poor progression-free survival or not coming up with the result that we were as radiation oncologists we are expecting. The higher the border, it is good, but obviously when you raise the border, there are issues regarding toxicity. But I'm sure with the techniques like IMRTs and high techniques which are available nowadays in all, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities also, you can decrease those things and give the benefit to the patient. So we've discussed this thing that according to RTOG 0924 and TMS trial, L4-5 should be the superior border, and there are few trials which have taken aortic bifurcation into account for superior border. But aortic bifurcation, again, it is kind of an M1 disease, so you need to individualize that the treatment. I think you can add any cabazitaxel or docetaxel or abiraterone to those patients who are having high nodal volume in the aortic region, and then you can get benefit and you can decrease the toxicity by decreasing the size of the nodal disease. So regarding technique and dose schedules, what treatment and setup verification techniques would you use when planning RT to the pelvic nodes? Anybody can take this question.
So we would like to go ahead with IGRT, image-guided radiotherapy, following the bladder and the rectal protocols. And ideally, we treat the prostate patients in the morning and give them at least Crimaphen or something to see their bowel. And
how do you prepare your prostate cancer patients? Just for the sake of knowledge for the.
Yeah, first step starts with the planning CT scan itself.
Yes.
Planning CT scan, we make it a point that it should be done usually in the morning, because the treatment also should be done in the morning so that the bowel is empty. And we ask the patient to basically take their meals in the night and then take Crimaphen or some kind of a laxative, and then empty their bowels and come for radiation. And when they come for radiation, then at that point of time, they either should have very light breakfast or preferably fasting if they can. And then we ask them to empty their bladder, drink about half a liter of water, and half an hour later, we take the patients in for treatment. And daily we verify the bladder as well as the rectum that they are in their positions that we have to counsel the patients a lot and make them understand that maybe that you may have to wait for a longer period of time, but ultimately it will help you in the long run. And with daily imaging being verified by the consultant, that is further treated up.
Okay, so how often patient has to come out from the treatment room? Out of, for example, if you're treating patient for 30 fractions, for how many fractions do you see discrepancy in the images and you take out the patient and redo everything?
I see the problems are in the beginning. The problems are more in the beginning, in the first 3-4 fractions when the patient has not that, like they are more anxious.
Compliance.
But later on, I find that once the patient gets adapted to it, we also get to know the exact time when we have to take them inside. For some patient, it may be half an hour. For some patient, it may be 45 minutes. Somebody's bladder may be full in 20 minutes also. So once that gets adjusted, I do not face problems. In the initial time, there is a problem. And counseling again and again is a big issue that we have to keep on doing that, because then they tend to understand that why are we made to wait for long and all that. If we pacify them and they are able to convince them, then it goes smoothly.
Okay, Dr. Chirag, any more thing to it? What Dr. Rahul has suggested?
Yes, Rahul has told what we are doing in our hospital also. We are also doing bladder protocol, and when we counsel the patients about the treatment, what are the side effects and how we are going to do it. So patient almost they are prepared mentally that they have to wait around 30 to 45 minutes. So it is very easy.
Anybody uses fiducials in while doing CT scan?
No, we are not using.
Not anymore. We used in the past, but not anymore.
Okay.
Basically, image guidance with CBCT is enough for that.
Fine, but I just want to have understanding what are doing. Anything more to it? So otherwise we'll move ahead.
Yeah,
Manish, what we have faced in our practice is initially patient has to come out for the rectal gas. I mean, the gas is maybe more than what we have on the planning CT. In the latter part, they come because of cystitis, because they are not able to hold particular volume of urine.
In that, Kegel exercise helps us a lot sometimes. Like Kegel exercise, that helps sometimes of the patient, and also a little bit of anxiety that they develop.
Correct, very correct. As you said, actually, it will depend on the patient's temperament, how anxious he or she is.
But his anxiety has nothing to do. It's a problem for us, so we need to.
It makes us anxious, actually.
Yeah. So, what are the dose schedule? Nilesh, you can take this question.
Generally, I used to do 74 in 37 few years back, but now with better technology, I do hypofractionation 16-20 and or 17-20.
So, to both pelvis and prostate, or how do you treat pelvis and how do you treat prostate?
Pelvis and prostate, it is 17-28, and the nodal dose is equivalent of 45 to 46 gray. If the nodes are involved, then I would take it on the GTV node would receive dose up to 54 gray. EQD2.
Okay. So forget about the nodal disease.
Elective node is 46 to 50 gray. EQD2.
In conventional fractionation?
Yeah, EQD2 46 to 50 gray.
Okay. So if I understand you clearly, you are treating in 60 gray in 20 fractions. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
so suppose I have to treat nodes. If I'm treating nodes, I would take him.
We are treating nodes over here.
Okay. No. Then it is 17-28.
Okay,
so I give node 50.4 in 28. Okay. Node would be 50.4 in 28, and primary would be 17-28.
Okay. Dr. Triranjan, what is your schedule?
So there are two only. Either I do, if it is still favorable intermediate, we'll do SBRT, then that's 5 fraction. That's no pelvic nodal. If I have to include pelvic nodal, I mostly follow from beginning only moderate hypofraction. So 16-20 prostate, intermediate or high with inclusion of seminal vesicle as per the CHIP protocol, and nodal would be 44 gray in 20 fraction.
You incorporate seminical vesicle into your target volume always?
stratification. There's a clear chip protocol guideline. Then you
Yeah.
have a set of CTVs. So depending on if it is high risk or intermediate, and then if it in intermediate, then just the 1 proximal seminal vesicle is in the 60 gray volume. In high risk, the whole count.
Okay.
Because the
Dr. Samir?
protocol was not inclusive of high risk. This is an amendment from the hypo-RT-PC trial, and also TMC. Dr. Indrajit has published his data of in pelvic nodal also in the moderate. And so this is what guideline they follow.
Yeah, actually, even we follow the CHIP protocol, 60 gray 20 fraction to the prostate and 44 gray 20 fraction to the nodes, and it works pretty well. Now, at least we are having a 4 to 5 years follow-up. There is no increased bowel toxicity, especially if we are going ahead with IMRT and the strict IGRT regimen.
Yeah, very true.
When you are treating prostate cancer patient, what is the commonest complaint that patient comes in terms of side effects patient comes to you in your OPD during treatment or after?
Interrupt, as Rahul said, because we also following this 2.5 years. This year we have published it in a European urology have early quality of life with the moderate hypofractionation towards the end. The basic urinary urgency starts around 2 to 3 months. It generally settles in about 90 to 100 days, and an irritable bowel type people report around 4 to 6 months. It was 8 months till we have analyzed for most of the patients. It is very
the toxicity is more of bladder or of GI toxicity?
More of GI. It's more of GI. Bladder rise and sudden fall. The GI is bit pro.
Okay, which is
experience, in my particular practical experience, the bladder has been slightly more toxicity. As far as bowel and the rectum are concerned, it's not that much.
So rectum
because theoretically, when you fill up the bladder, the dose, the 40 to 50 gray kind of dose, bladder receive that kind of dose when you fill up the bladder.
Right.
Theoretically, they say the bladder toxicity is more. So just wanted to understand what are the different experiences of people.
Practically, that much of bladder toxicity, I guess most of us will agree.
No, yeah, I would agree with that. We have more bladder toxicity, maybe because of urethritis and cystitis both, particularly if we are treating the nodes.
Right. If you see all the patient-reported outcome data, also it has a time frame. The bladder, the median time to get the side effects with the moderate hypofractionation, whatever data is around 70 to 120 days. But the late GI, the grade 2, that is very less. In all modern series, it's just 5 and grade 3 is hardly there. But that
yeah, I think Tinanjan, you are talking about late toxicity.
Yeah,
we are talking about
no, even acute is also hardly it will be grade 2. We don't see grade 3, I think, with IMRT.
Yeah, it is grade 2 only. Grade 2 only. That is the only complaint they have actually. Otherwise, it is very well tolerated.
Yeah, grade 3 toxicities, not more of grade 3 bladder toxicities.
Correct, correct.
So anybody uses dose escalation, they try to do some fancy kind of things, or they are happy with whatever the way they are treating.
Generally, we are using 78 gray. I am giving 78 gray in 39 fraction.
Okay. And your patients are tolerating it well. You are comfortable
definitely
with the toxicity and everything.
Most of the patients are very well. They are tolerating very well. No such toxicity.
And you are treating with 3D CRT or IMRT?
IGRT.
What kind of?
IGRT.
All prostate. Okay.
Yes.
Or if
I don't do prostate without IGRT.
Same here.
Yeah.
At 16, actually 70. We do. It is actually 70. Exactly 70.
Yeah, because that paper had also commented on the alpha beta ratio of prostate, because that probably was estimated something. They even in the trial they felt that it will be somewhere around 74 or something, but the results were much better than expected.
Exactly.
Manish, the benefit of escalation is right up to 78 to 80 gray. Beyond 80 gray, you get more of toxicity, and then there is plateau actually. You don't gain anything in terms of control rate. So it is wise to stop at 78 to 80.
Exactly, because long back
equivalent to that. Okay. Agree.
Yeah, equivalent dose, equivalent dose.
Okay. So we have discussed about the toxicities. The newer trials are coming up with few of the trials are also using cabazitaxel to enhance the shrinkage of the tumor. Let's say the results will be available in next 5 to 15 years, and then I think we'll be discussing something else at that time.
Manish, you can sum up in a couple
Okay.
of minutes time.
So now this was my last kind of thing, and I am thankful to all the panelists, and I am actually also thankful to the organizing committee for providing me this opportunity. And this I have borrowed few slides from Dr. Malik because I was given this task right in this afternoon. But I think the discussion was fruitful, and everybody has benefited out of it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Manish Sinda and all panelists for excellent discussion. Now may I invite Dr. Manish Gupta from AIIMS Bhopal to conduct quiz. Dr. Manish Gupta, please.
So, Rushi, there is an announcement from AstraZeneca side. Ravinder? Basically, AstraZeneca is going to launch a campaign, Pro Action. It is a campaign which thinks beyond pill, where AstraZeneca building content to the address prostate cancer patient need during entire prostate cancer patient journey. Be it emotional need, be it exercise required for pelvic muscles, be it sexual life queries, be it empowering patient about treatment, be it do and don't do's while taking Zoladex and many more. AstraZeneca team will reach you to all for Red Dawn to share Pro Action campaign. Basically, it is a campaign which they are going to launch for radiation oncologists to explain their patient about the proper prostate cancer treatment. The colleague involved in this Pro Action campaign names are reflected on the slides, and this very good initiative of AstraZeneca, they asked us to organize a radiation oncologist meet on prostate cancer, and they want to discuss the various issues regarding the prostate cancer meet. And this type of meet we are organizing on Jonas